Hi, I'm Lisa Sheirer, and I'm an artist. And I'm working on a number of different series, but I wanted to just talk about briefly today how different forms of photography, including my microscopes, have helped me in some of the formation of my recent artwork. So I work in paint. I also work digitally. I work with soundscapes, photography, which is mostly documentary, and sculpture. And this is a photograph that I shot in the microscope lab. It's not under a microscope, but it's a pretty high definition image at Frostburg State University. I'm a longtime user of alternative forms of photography. So when I began my career in 1979, there were these giant cameras called stat cameras or process cameras, and they would allow for really large images. The only drawback was the size of the processor. So they were contact black and white prints, and I used them for my artwork, and I was able to make 12-foot by 18-foot black and white prints. And also when I began teaching photography, it was so long ago that digital cameras were really expensive, like $20,000 and up. And so to be able to get students to be able to get really cool images, of course, we were also using film, but that took time to develop in the darkroom. We used scanners. So I quickly co-opted some high-res scanners and went over to partner with the biology department. This was at Frostburg State University. And my students and I began photographing things using the scanner. So with these bird skulls, I put just a drape of non-reflective black fabric, velvety fabric over top, and then was able to do super high resolution photography as we see here. And then as things changed over the many years that I've been alive and working, I really started focusing on natural things, the non-human world, I'll say. And so my work, I'll say more recently over the last 15 years, has been a lot about scale. And so when we're talking about scale, most of the time we're talking about scale in relationship to people. And so when we're talking about plants and flora and fauna and mycoflora of the forest, many of the inhabitants there are much smaller than people, and so can many times be dismissed. And so my work is a little bit about changing the scale of things, ambiguous spaces. So some of my artwork is a little hard to tell whether it's under the ocean or it's out in space or it's, just right in front of us. I'm also concerned deeply about our watersheds and the saving of wild places. So the Frederick City watershed, so I'm located in Frederick. I'm about an hour west of DC and Baltimore. And the Frederick watershed is about a quarter of a mile from my house. It's not a wilderness area per se, but it is a forest. And the water that filters through it is part of the Frederick City water supply. It's about a quarter of the water supply that goes to Frederick City. And because I'm so close, I spent so much time in front of the computer that I started going on these hikes and taking a camera, and that eventually evolved into an iPhone because I didn't want to lug all this equipment around. And so I started photographing the watershed and its inhabitants. And so this is one of the inhabitants. You probably all have seen these, common box turtle. This is actually an image that was vectorized. So, of course, when you shoot a digital photograph, you have an image made up of pixels, and the pixels are what I'm doing is vectorizing them in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm assigning shapes to the different color areas, and those shapes are able to be easily selected and colorized if need be. They're also, the strokes around the shapes can be colorized. And so, also, the other thing about vector images, as you probably all know, is that you can scale them up to any size. So with this smaller creature, smaller than human creature, the common box turtle, I was able to make a print of this image that was 8 feet by 10 feet. And again, it when things are large, they have a tendency to have more importance. And so that was created for an art exhibition I did a couple years ago. The same thing with this, it was vectorized. And then in this particular one, and I don't know if you can see it clearly, but there are lots of layers. There are probably 150 layers of vectorized lines from other images in the Frederick City watershed layered over top of it. And in this particular art piece, the lines are meant to show the energy or the life cycle of the forest. So at a certain point, I realized if I want to actually be active in collecting data to make a difference for our watershed and watersheds in the area, I realized that all my degrees are in fine arts. I needed science classes. So I began to take biology classes, and I took a plant class, a tree class, and an insect class, and it really informed how scientists categorize things, how scientists speak about data. And so I didn't want to be just this person that's saying, "Oh, I think it's beautiful and it makes me feel great." I wanted to have I wanted to be able to speak intelligently about it. I also began a social media campaign, and so in my social media, I post pretty much every day. Some resident of the Frederick City watershed. I will say that this flower, the pink lady slipper orchid, was kind of my gateway flower into really looking closely at the inhabitants of the watershed. And that just sort of put me on a trajectory about 15 years ago to really begin looking closely at things. Here we have some bird nest fungi. The mycoflora up in the watershed is crazy. I could show you so many images of that. This is an earth star fungi that looks like a critter. It looks like it's got legs and it could walk away. It's just an amazing thing. So all this looking at things up close with the macro lens and looking at things far away, my paintings began to change, and the space became a little bit more ambiguous. So I began doing paintings using inks, and I really like the transparency of the inks. And this is water-based inks painted over top. So I'm spraying the ink on, and I'm also spraying it with water, and then different lines form, and then I'm painting with brushes and using metallic inks. And the metallic inks allow for kind of a sparkle as you walk around the paintings. This is another one again. It's a bit of an ambiguous space. It could be underwater. It could be a microscopic image. It could be, you don't know exactly, it's some kind of natural thing, but you're not sure exactly what. So last summer, Dr. Taylor up at Frostburg State University devised a class for artists to come in and use her microscopy lab. And so we did. And we went 2 days a week for 4 hours at a time, sometimes more. And she taught us how to use the lab. And these are the results of some of that. This is hawkweed. It's a weed that's everywhere in the mid-Atlantic states. It's a cross section of the stem, and a little bit closer image of that. And this was the dissecting microscope, the dandelion, really nice macro shot, able to, the lighting. It was interesting arranging all the lighting to get just the best shot. And the chrysanthemum, which smelled really great when it had the hot lights on it around the microscope. And then this was my favorite of everything. This is the stomata of a fern. And I just loved that I could see it, that I could see this, way that the plant takes in, energy and air. And it almost made me cry when I first saw it. Using that same process, kind of scraping back the outer part, putting it on the microscope and being able to see the foxglove petals, the poppy flower petals at their cellular level. Again, kind of an outer shot of poppy sepal. Then at Dr. Taylor's suggestion, we dissolved a lot of different chemicals in water and heated them up and then photographed them. So salt and candy with fluorescent lights on it, obviously. So taking that long look and closer, I started a series called the Blakean Portals, and William Blake was a proto-romantic poet, artist, a little bit of everything. And I started producing these. Again, these are ink paintings, but they've also got metallic powders that I'm able to adhere to board. And these are actually three-dimensional pieces. They do have a relief to them. And again, it's an ambiguous space. You could be looking through a camera lens. You could be looking through a microscope. You could be looking through a telescope. And because of the metallics, as you walk around the pieces, they actually shimmer or glitter. And then recently, my nephew wanted an image of microglia for his PhD thesis. And so I did this painting based on a number of stained slides that he showed me. He works with microglia as it relates to traumatic brain injury and how it damages the microglia. And so anyway, I was able to pretty much render them as they look by blowing the ink around with straws and tilting the desk where I was working, letting the ink dry. And then these are just some recent images. Again, they do look kind of microscopic to me, but they could also be another point of view. Kind of crazy. They look, especially this one, looks like a few of the images that we looked at today. I also completed 2 books after getting a grant from the Maryland State Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts, sadly no more, but about the watershed. And again, just trying to get people to understand what's going on in the forest, how things are linked in a broad in a broad outlook, and also very, very, very close. So anyway, thank you all for hanging with me, and do consider inviting collaborations with creatives. There is money for this still in county and state arts councils. So please consider it. Any questions?